Hi, so I'm really excited you're going to be learning with me today. I'm going to be teaching you about trading during the Dark Ages, also known as the Medieval or Middle Ages. And so this is going to go into a lot of different subcategories, so I hope you're ready to learn. And if you want to take notes, this is the time to get your pen and your paper. All right, so the Dark Ages started somewhere around the 4th century CE because of the fall of the Roman Empire and ended around the 14th century CE because of the beginning or the rise of the Renaissance. In between that time, there was a lot of progression in trade. At the beginning, because of the fall of the Roman Empire and a lot of people trying to adjust to feudalism, a system of government through lords and kings, and also just a crash in the economy, many people were just trying to keep their families afloat and have enough food for the night. So a lot of the trade that did occur happened between small communities, between people that you knew. So it was a really tight-knit system. It wasn't very global, and we don't see it become something more global until the higher Middle Ages, so around the 11th century CE. And right now we're going to get into the 5 factors that started what we can call the revival of trade. All right, so the first factor, the first thing to really kickstart trade again was the Crusades. And if you don't know what that is, basically it's when Alexios I, the emperor of the Byzantines, contacted Pope Urban II to send missionaries to Anatolia, which was a place populated by Muslims. And he wanted to retake this land. He wanted to conquer it, and he wanted it to be his. And the Pope agreed to help him. So basically, Pope Urban II gave a sermon in France, which is a lecture, and he told the people, the Christians, that if they helped to battle the pagans or take over that land, that God would forgive them for all their sins. And so the people were all over this idea. They wanted to go to heaven. So they helped. And this is the beginning of the Crusades, which was religious wars where Christianity is trying to be the dominant religion. And so what does this have to do with trade? Well, there's a lot of travel involved with the Crusades. A lot of people traveling from Europe to other places, a lot of the Middle Eastern areas. And so they were exposed to products and goods that they didn't have where they were. And they wanted to ensure that they were able to have access to these in the future. And so that brings us to our next factor. Number 2 is Italian ships. So during these Crusades, the Italians had offered their ships to transport the Crusaders. And this was really smart because once they dropped off the Crusaders, they had these empty ships. And they didn't want to head back with empty ships. They filled them up with all the goods from that area. So again, like the Middle Eastern area. And they would have mostly silk fabrics, which was something that was very popular in that area. And so they would fill it up and bring it back. And that was the beginning of these trading routes. Sea trading routes were very popular because of the efficiency, right? Because it was a lot faster to transport the goods than it was walking on land or using a horse. And also you could fit a lot more cargo in a ship than you could when you were walking. So, a very popular and successful place that had harbors was Flanders, and you'll read a lot about them if you decide to study more about the Dark Ages and trading. They were a northern European region, so today it would be France, Belgium, the Netherlands, and they were successful because of the harbors they built, and it was very accessible to others, and also it was very desirable to go there because they had a lot of very big fairs and very big markets. All right, so these last 2 factors are very similar in the fact that they are both groups of people who just contributed to the more complex trading system. The first is the Hanseatic League, which is a group of merchants who merged together to create more trading routes in the Baltic and Northern Sea area, and also the Vikings, who traveled quite a bit, and they actually did most of their trading through land, which is quite surprising because they were also known for doing a lot of sea traveling, but they traveled a lot, so they had a lot of goods to offer. So now those were the 5 factors that pushed trading to become more complex, but now we're going to talk a bit about the actual markets and the money involved. So markets were always a thing. They were just local. Now they became something international, right? So when you go to a market, it wouldn't just be what the guy next door had to offer. It's what the guy 5 hours away has to offer as well. It's this mix of new produce. And that was very, very appealing to the populations. And because the populations were appealed by it and they wanted to go because there was more options and more variety, the merchants were making more money. There's more people, there's more money, there's more things to trade with. So the people are happy, the merchants are happy, and also the government is happy. The monarchs are happy. They are taxing these merchants, they are making money. The economy is starting to build itself back up. Now, how did this happen? Well, one, because we already talked about those complexities in the system and the new trading routes, but also because of advancements in agricultural technology, things like the horseshoe and using horses instead of oxen for plow, the farmers were becoming more efficient, which meant they could make more produce. Now, all of this combined, the people happy, the merchants happy, and the government happy, started to grow cities around these huge markets. So the merchants would want to move closer, right? Because they didn't want to travel so far. They wanted to live closer to this place because this is where they were making their money. And they started building houses around it. The population started moving towards the markets, right? Because they also want to be closer to the produce, closer to the things that they are now relying on. So this was really great for the economy, really great for the people, really great for the merchants. Now we're going to talk about money, and not really in the beginning of the Middle Ages, but more of towards the High Middle Ages or the end of the Dark Ages. They used 3 different types of currencies, which was coins, bartering, and vouchers. So they used coins, just silver and gold ones, but we know that those are materials that are very scarce. And so not a lot of people had them, and it was mostly rich people hoarding them. Then for bartering, a lot of cons come with that, which are if you are trading a loaf of bread, that bread can 1, mold and go bad, have no value, and 2, can be consumed. So you can't really save that for later. You have to either trade it right away or eat that loaf of bread and not have something to trade with later on. But then they came up with something called vouchers, which is when a merchant who knew that they had a supply of something that was in demand, they would create these pieces of paper and they would say, this piece of paper can get you so-and-so amount of breads and it is worth so-and-so amount of coins. People would trust this piece of paper, and that's because they knew that it had value to it. And they knew that if they gave this piece of paper to the baker will give them a loaf of bread. And that gave it value. Everyone trusted in them. That is why it worked. So people would not only trade this voucher for bread, but they'd start trading the voucher for other things. And again, this wasn't really something that was super popular at that time, so it didn't stick on. It was just kind of like an inventive thing they came up with. In the end, they did use coins more, but I thought that was really inventive, and I applaud them for trying to problem solve. And finally, I'm going to be talking about guilds. So what are guilds? Not gills on a fish, but guilds. They are an organization of people who are in the same profession. So merchants uniting, basically. And they kind of created a middle class. So they were merchants, so they had some money, but they weren't peasants, but they also were not lords and kings. They were in the middle somewhere. And they didn't have just one role. They actually did quite a lot. The first thing was that they protected each other and they protected their product. They created a set of standards for their product, and they created a pricing for their product. So say this was a guild of blacksmith and they were making particularly horseshoes. They would say this horseshoe has to be the shiny, and it has to be the sturdy, and it has to be no more than 2 coins. Everyone in the guild had to have their product approved by each other. And of course, this was only in their city, right? They didn't have power of other cities, just in their one city. So there was a group of guilds who were in charge of horseshoes in a different city, different group of people. So in addition to protecting their product, they also protected each other against monarchs taking their money, and they also kind of doubled as an insurance company. If someone in the guild died and they left a widow with children, then the rest of the guilds would support that widow in that time, whether it was giving her necessities or money. And then on top of that, they had political power. So slowly they gained the respect of lords and kings and monarchs. They gained their respect and they slowly built it up. And also through the church. They did a lot of events through the church. So some of these guilds didn't even have to pay taxes, which is insane. And they could also help make decisions. And again, it's important to remember that there were not guilds for every single product and there were not guilds in every single city. So that is everything about guilds that I'm going to talk about today. And I hope you enjoyed this because this was very interesting for me to learn about, and I am excited to have shared this information with you. So hopefully you'll be inspired to go learn more about guilds or money or markets or crusades or the 5 factors that led to the revival of trade on your own. All right, bye.